Welcome to the show. I'm Kevin Stolla, and this is my podcast, Vote Your Conscience. This podcast is about politics and self-improvement and the way that I'm hoping we can change our political environment through self-improvement without individuals taking responsibility for their own lives and their own actions, such as how they spend their money, decisions that they make on a daily basis to take care of themselves and their families, and also how they vote in the polls. So I'm going to cover one topic today that I don't hear covered a lot, and it has to do with government spending. So this one topic, there's two positions that people normally take, and I want to explain why I believe that neither of these positions are valid, and they actually don't particularly matter that much in the overall scheme, because there is so much more of a problem than people realize, and what the politicians are pushing for doesn't even really make sense. So my opinion, first off, our budget for the federal government isn't balanced. So in the first place, we've been in a spending deficit for the last, I believe the last time that we had a surplus was during Clinton's presidency in the 1990s. So we have been racking up our national debt greatly every single year. The way that they get this money to spend is that they can print money through the Federal Reserve banking system. And they can also sell bonds to other countries, China, Japan. They can sell bonds to citizens. You can go and buy U.S. Treasury notes and give money to the government, and they will pay you interest. So the problem is there are people on one side saying, hey, we need to reduce the spending. And then there's people on the other side that say the government needs more money so that we can fund things like extra welfare and, pay higher Social Security, disability, get universal health care, and everything like that. My main goal of this podcast is to get people to understand that most people on either side of this issue or almost any issue, the reason that they have an opposing view to you is because they think that will lead to a better outcome. It's not because they want to see people suffer and struggle and they just hate this country and want it to be destroyed. There are some people with that view, and there's people that they seem to have that view, but it's not what they mean when they want to destroy America, or, mostly they just hate the system we have. They want it to change. It's not like they hate all of the people. So I always want to try and promote that as the main thing that we have to get an understanding. Otherwise, we can't even discuss these issues, because people automatically start with hate. They start from the perspective of the other person. The reason they want these things is selfish, and it's only so that they can be doing well. And some of that is true, of course. Everyone wants to protect their own families, but it is a lot deeper than that, where people have different ideas about how the community is going to thrive. So on the one side, people think more government spending is going to benefit the community. And on the other side, people think paying less taxes is going to benefit the community. I tend towards the paying less taxes side, but I do see a need for some amount of welfare. I believe that we should be able to take care of people. My main problem is that I believe that most of the welfare for our neighbors who need help should be more in the private sector, and it should be through private charities as well. I believe there should be some kind of government safety net. I really don't prefer it to be at the federal level when we all have our own state governments. Why can't we solve it in our own community? Washington, D.C., I can't see them caring about what's going on in Detroit and Pontiac and Flint, in Michigan, where I live, because they don't exist here. They aren't here. All of the politicians that are in the Congress, there's only 2 senators from my state. So out of the 100 senators, there's 2 people who maybe care about those cities and, underprivileged people in my community. The other people, they're trying to do stuff for their own states. So how are they supposed to help me? And the main thing is they really aren't. I don't believe the federal government was created for this to help us on a local level, because they absorb all of this money and then they decide from a top-down approach what's going to help the country as a whole. The country as a whole, in my opinion, is much too big to try to manage that way. I believe that our government was set up to have the power start at the people, go to the local governments, go up to the state government, and finally, the smallest portion of power should be going to the federal government. But the main point today here is with the government spending. We keep having politicians like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And in 2016, I actually wanted Bernie Sanders to be president. It didn't work out. I primaried for him, and he supposedly got more votes in the primary than Hillary Clinton, but it actually doesn't matter. That's not how nominees are selected. So they will take the people's, opinion into consideration, but the Democratic National Convention will be the one who decides it at the end, who their candidate's going to be. So it ended up being Hillary Clinton. We all know how that went. Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. My opinion's changed since then. That was 10 years ago. But Bernie Sanders, he just constantly is promoting taking more and more money, and he is always promoting that from the wealthy. He never says, let's take more of the poor people's money, because no one in their right mind would think that makes sense. So he has to say, let's tax the rich people. But his main goal is to get more money into the government, the federal government. Right now, just to start out here, we are spending, last year, 2025, we spent $7.1 trillion. Okay, the federal government did this. They only brought in $5.3 trillion in tax revenue. So the deficit there is about $1.7, $1.8 trillion. Okay, that means that they spent that much more money than they took in. Now, on top of this, they want to tax, Bernie Sanders promotes a 5% wealth tax on every billionaire. I completely disagree with a wealth tax. It makes no sense to tax people based on a net worth. That's not money that they have. It's not income, especially, when we get into unrealized gains and what that even means. I believe that the government will always try to take as much power as possible, just like any other organization. So it doesn't matter what organization, it's going to be. It could be a private company, it can be a nonprofit, it can be a public company, it can be a government. Organizations want to grow. It's their main job. Government organizations want to grow. If they don't spend their budget that year, then the government will deem that they don't need that budget and then take it away from them next year. So they have to spend that money and then ask for more money. This is why we're in a constant deficit, okay? And 1.8 trillion out of 7, that is it's almost a 25% deficit. They spent 25% more money than they had. That's, if I do that year after year, I go broke. The reason they can't go broke is because they control the currency. They can print it, or at least the Federal Reserve banking system controls the currency. They can print it, and the Congress can ask the Federal Reserve Bank for money. One of the craziest things is that there is interest on this debt because we owe this money to the Federal Reserve Bank. We owe this money to countries like China and Japan. They own, it's both almost $2 trillion in our debt. And we have to pay interest on that debt. The interest on that debt is $970 billion in 1 year, 2025. Almost $1 trillion was just debt payments on interest, okay? That means that it's about 20% of what the revenue that our government took in goes directly to interest payments. Okay. Out of the amount that they spent, it's a little bit less. It's more like 16% or so. But what that interest payment comes out to is $2,852 per American citizen. That's including every man, woman, and child. And it comes out to $6,466 per taxpayer. Not every American citizen is a taxpayer. Okay, there's children, there are elderly people that are on Social Security, they don't generate any income. They may be a state taxpayer or a local taxpayer if they own a home. There's property taxes, in your city, but they won't be a federal taxpayer. So we're talking about the federal government right now because I believe that we need to rein in the federal government and try to work on these things in our own states. Our states are set up so that we can work on our own community. When people think of community, they think the United States of America. The United States of America is not my community. It can't be. It's much too large for us to be, best friends with everybody. I don't know people in Alaska. Okay. I don't know people in Hawaii. It's too big for us to try to help them. So I do believe we should have a federal government. I think there should be some kind of response from the federal government, emergency services to help states that need it. And there should be some amount of funding that goes to the federal government. I don't believe in an income tax. I don't believe that's the best way for them to get revenue. I think it's an unfair way for them to get revenue. Most workers are just trying to pay their bills, and the federal government is taking money out of their paycheck, which is crazy, the levels that they take it to. So at the very least, I wish that they raised the standard deduction to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. So right now it's at like $14,000 or $14,500, and that means if you make less than that, you won't have to pay income taxes. I think that needs to be raised to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 so that no one who's making under that pays taxes to the federal government. If you can't afford to live, why should you have to contribute to the federal government? So that's just my opinion on, how it should be funded. But the problem is they're still spending all of this money while they're still asking for more all the time. So Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they have just recently been promoting this, which I think is just a totally ridiculous idea. They want to put a 50% tax on AI companies. So they're not going to tax on what they profit. They already do that because AI companies function as any other company. If an AI company generates revenue and they generate a profit, they are going to pay the same corporate tax as any other company that makes any profit. On top of this, what they want to do is set up a fund where the federal government will be in control of 50% of the AI company's stock. Every AI company will have to give 50% of their stock, controlling interest, over to the federal government. The federal government will be a 50% owner of these companies. This hasn't really been something they've done in the past. They've done it short term for different types of bailouts, which I don't agree in that either. That's just the whole too big to fail situation. That's not how a free market functions. And you should be letting large companies fail. If they can't manage their finances, they have the advantage over everybody else to be able to manage their finances. They can hire the best accountants in the world, the best money managers, everything like that. The smartest marketers in the whole world, they can hire. If I'm a small business and I'm going to fail, they just say, sucks to be you. But if you're, AIG insurance company, for some reason, they'll just give you hundreds of billions of dollars when you can't manage your already hundreds of billions of dollars. So I don't agree with that. But those are the scenarios where a government has owned partial ownership of companies, and that was temporarily because they loaned them the money in these bailouts to be paid back at a later date, so they had some controlling interest in it. Whether you agree with that or not, the government has never had ownership like this. They're not supposed to be playing in the market like this. They're here to govern. They're not supposed to be owning companies. The AI companies, there's nothing different about them than any other company. What Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren keep promoting is that AI is going to make so much money. Okay, it's going to produce so much wealth that it's going to put all these people out of jobs, okay, because AI is going to take everybody's job, which it won't. In my opinion, there's no way that can happen. We can just make up new jobs. It doesn't matter. The wealthy can't hold all of the resources away from people. If everybody loses their job, the wealthy people already understand this. They've seen A Bug's Life, okay, where they're the grasshoppers and the ants. They realize that they're collecting all the food for them. The billionaires, people act like they don't know this. They understand that there's more of us than them and that we can take them over anytime we want if we're not comfortable enough. So we haven't gotten to that point yet. People are comfortable enough, and that's why there hasn't been some kind of huge full-scale revolution in this country. What these people are saying is that everyone's going to lose their jobs to AI, and then the AI companies are just going to have all this money. No one else will be able to get access to this AI money. So the government is going to have to take 50% of it, which I don't know why they're promoting it now. The current AI kind of sucks anyway, and it's taking some certain jobs, but it hasn't manifested, yet, and it's still going to take years to start taking the millions and millions and millions of jobs that they're promoting. And it hasn't started generating the revenue that they're talking about. So they want to get ahead of it and just start taking the money right up front. They want to be part owners of the companies, the federal government, and then they're claiming that they will use this money to help you. So my problem with that is that the federal government's already not helping you. The federal government, in order to get welfare and be like at poverty levels, you have to make such a tiny amount of money that you could barely even survive. And then they give you almost nothing just so you can just barely make it by. You can't scrounge up enough to actually not be stressed, get motivated and be able to take care of things in your life. There's no incentive to get out of it. It's very difficult, and they don't give you enough, so you're still struggling to try and make the payments, even with the welfare that they do give. So this can be a counter argument for people and go, well, yeah, of course, that's why we need more welfare. But they don't have enough money for that. There isn't enough resources. It's not just money. People think that money is just paper or, digital bits of data in a computer. Money is that, but it is a representative of actual resources. What's actually happening in the world? Who has this much corn to trade for this much beef, to trade for hiring a software engineer for a year? Every single dollar that's spent, it represents labor, or it represents a product or a service that is being performed or created. And that's what's behind the money. The money that the government spends, they get to just print it, and then they get to take our resources for the fake money that they printed. So in that aspect, the money is that for them. It's play money. They get to print it, and they can just buy stuff. You have to actually provide value to get money. Everybody does. Even the billionaires that didn't do anything to get their wealth, let's say they inherited $1 billion and now they're a billionaire. Someone provided value in order for that money to be created. Their parents did, or their great-grandparents, or their great-great-grandparents. Somebody created value that people were willing to trade their money for, and then those people obtained that money, and now they're invested into all sorts of different companies, real estate. They own a bunch of stuff that does generate value for people still, whether people want to believe it or not. If you're a landlord or you rent from a landlord, the landlord's providing value by owning that property, maintaining that property. They saved up enough money to get it, whether it was them or their parents or their grandparents or whoever created the wealth initially. So our federal government doesn't have to play by those rules. They get to print money and they can just buy whatever they want. The problem is the Congress, they do have these debt ceilings, which they've been talking about getting rid of. So they're only allowed to spend a certain amount of money, and then they have to call a congressional hearing and try to raise the debt ceiling again, which they do every single year because the debt keeps going up and the ceiling, they have to keep raising it. This is where we get the government shutdowns, because when they can't go over that debt ceiling, they need to be able to vote to fund different things in the government, because apparently they just can't keep their shit together to have it funded 1 year out, 3 years out, 5 years out. Like a lot of businesses would be planning for funding things way down the road, especially if they're a successful business. So I see our government as a very unsuccessful business that can't fail because they can print money and they control the money supply. So here's what my question is. How much spending is enough? Because I always hear people on I always hear people on one side or another, and some are saying we're spending too much. Some people don't care at all about the spending and only say that we need to tax the rich people. We need more tax revenue for the politicians. We need more tax revenue for, free healthcare, free education, free school lunches, and free, more welfare and free cell phones for people. And I don't know, it doesn't ever end what some people will ask for the government to provide. I mean, at some point it goes to, communism, where it's complete government control of the economy. So 100% of all of the resources and money is controlled by the government, and they divvy it up how they see fit. That's a nightmare scenario in my mind. I don't want the government to be in control of all of our resources. And you should neither, no matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or Green Party or whatever. If the government has total control, people seem to think under communism they're going to have all this choice or something, and they'll be able to go to art school because there's free school, and they'll be able to play the piano for money. But someone still has to decide who's going to play piano for money. So it's probably not going to be you, just like in the current system. If you try to go to school and you want to be a piano player for money, you can do it. But most piano players aren't getting paid that much money. Most never really get a real paying job for that either. And they have to have a second job on top of that. But the same thing is everyone can't be a piano player, because then no one makes food for the piano players. So under a communist system where the government will control all of the resources, they're going to dictate what people do and what people are predisposed to, and they're going to still choose the best piano players and the best fishermen and the best farmers. To some extent, I think the free market does a better job of that, because the people who can actually produce and, the piano player who can draw the biggest crowd gets paid the most. It's just how it works. If the government decides, then it's a panel of bureaucrats who gets to decide who plays the best piano, and they'll just put that player wherever they want. That's how the government decides things. They analyze it based on their own opinion, and then they just decide, we want this builder to build this thing. We want this piano player in our hall over here to play for the president. They just make decisions like that. For businesses and individuals, we have to actually decide what we value. Okay, so if you want to go and see Taylor Swift, you can go and look at ticket prices and decide if, the value is there for that price of the ticket. The government doesn't work that way. They have them funding. They can also print as much as they want. So they just decide if it's worth it or not. And then they print the money and they spend the money. And my main problem with them getting more tax revenue is that they haven't decided to spend the money on you or me. They haven't done the health care already. They have $7 trillion of spending last year. They didn't decide to do it for you and me. They didn't decide to do it for the veterans. And it's just, they never will. They're not going to, just because you give them more money. If we just take the money from Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all of the billionaires, and which isn't enough money anyway, you'll have to start coming for the 100 millionaires for sure, more money, and then 10 millionaires, etc., because they're going to need more money because they spend it constantly, 7.1 trillion last year. So the main thing that I see that people do not understand is that if we just have the government take more money, it doesn't help you. It doesn't correlate how much money the government gets to how much they help you. They don't have to help you. They don't care about you. Most of the people already knows that. Most of the people already know this. No matter what side you're on, you know that politicians don't care about you. So why would they help you if they got more revenue? That's one of my main problems with let's take the money from the billionaires. I don't care about the billionaires losing money. That's not my problem. My problem is the money going from them to the government does not solve the problem because the government hasn't solved any of these problems. They have more money than any of these billionaires, okay? And people don't even understand the difference between the government spending and the billionaires, okay? Because you're looking at net worth. If you're looking at Elon Musk, and his net worth is hilarious right now, it's like $700 billion or something. When you look at that and you go, okay, so he has as much money as 1/10 of the federal government, because 7 trillion to 700 billion. The way that works isn't functional. Elon Musk doesn't have $700 billion to spend. In fact, he cannot spend that money because then his company is gone. The federal government literally spends that money. They have that money and they spend it every single year. And they keep getting the revenue in, and they don't even get that much revenue. They just spend more than they have. No problem. Doesn't matter to them at all. The politicians aren't held accountable for it. They don't get a bill saying, you guys spent too much, now we're going to take your house. Nothing happens like that. They just print more money. And that money, what it does is it makes your dollars worth less because now there's more money in circulation. So they get to spend it at today's dollar value, and they devalued your currency as they did it. Whereas that's why your prices in groceries are going up and your cars. And there are other factors. There's tons of market factors on this, but inflation is literally expanding the money supply. It's the definition of inflation. There's different things, price inflation, and that can be caused by tons of reasons. It just goes off of supply and demand. And there can be, different people that hold different commodities and services, and they can withhold them from the people, and they can price gouge in certain situations like that. Not many, because once it gets to a certain point of profitability, other investors and business owners will notice, and then they will, flock to that. If they hold all the diamonds hostage, people will go and they will find more diamonds, and then they will compete with them on the price and lower the price. The government, they don't function this way. So giving them more money is just giving them direct power and control. It literally takes a piece of the overall economy. So our economy in America, the GDP, is in the 30 trillions, okay? And they get a piece of it. So our federal government is like 25 to 30% of our GDP right now. And the more that they get, the less control that private citizens have. The problem that people have with this is that they go, yeah, but we don't have control of it. I don't have control of it. I mean, if you calculate my net worth, it's almost zero. Okay. So my spending power still impacts the GDP. I still have revenue in my company, and I still buy groceries and, gas and vehicles and whatever I need. So I still do impact the economy in the GDP, but I don't own the wealth. So it's what, people are upset about is the billionaires have all of this money and wealth, and that is true that they do. I don't believe, the same thing. The net worth of a billionaire is not how much money they have. That's not how net worth works. They can't spend that money. But they have way more resources than they would ever need, in 1,000 lifetimes, and it is unfair in most of these circumstances that there's people struggling this much who are, working hard. So I understand people's frustration on that. My problem is the solution in their mind is give money to the next, even more powerful organization than the billionaires. The federal government, they can destroy the billionaires whenever they want. They control the laws of the entire land. They control the money supply. They can deflate the currency. They can inflate the currency. They can make advantageous regulations. They can strip contracts, government contracts, from some of these larger producers if they want. They can do all sorts of stuff to the billionaires. They can lock them up in all sorts of audits through the IRS, investigations through OSHA. If they want to mess with a specific billionaire, they can. And the billionaires, they do have resources to fight against it too. But the federal government is far more powerful than any of these billionaires. People may point out, but what about, I thought the billionaires, they paid for the campaigns and stuff, and now they're getting what they want from the government, so they control the government. It doesn't work like that. They're the same thing. It's politicians being bribed and then giving the people who bribed them what they want. Who has the power in that relationship? The politicians can stop accepting bribes any day they want. The billionaires have to hope that they accept it. Hey, I funded your campaign, remember? And they do have power to try to fight against the individual politician, obviously. But if we had good politicians, they wouldn't accept bribes. That's not how they would run the country. So, and they have far more power than the billionaires. So taking the money from one group, the billionaires, and giving it to the people who control trillions of dollars, I don't see how that's going to help the average American citizen. We want people to be doing well. We have plenty of resources. There's tons of food. It's like something like 40% of food in the U.S. gets thrown away. That's ridiculous that it's that high, and there's some people that have a difficult time getting access. When people say that there's kids who are starving in America and people are starving, there's nobody who is starving in America other than people who are literally being tortured by their parents or relatives, or they've been captured in some form of slavery. There are tons of food banks all over the country. There is a ton of government programs, even with Trump's administration slashing some of these like lunch programs and different welfare programs. There's a ton of local welfare programs and state government welfare programs. The federal government is only a fraction of all of the welfare. So, even the panhandlers that are around, most of them are decently fed. It's pretty cheap to eat here. So there aren't just people starving everywhere. But people will promote this, and they will promote that if you take away this welfare program, these people will starve. They won't, because there's so much food that's being thrown away. People don't understand this. But that's not really my main point. My main point is to try to show that if we give the money to the government from the billionaires, who gets that money? Is the government going to suddenly stop funding wars? I don't think they will. Are they going to stop funding the national interest here and $1 trillion of interest. No, they're going to keep paying that, and they're going to keep spending even more than the money they take in, no matter what. What level of money is it going to take for them to go, let's balance the budget and make sure we spend as much as we take in? It's nothing. They don't care. It doesn't matter. Our spending in like year 2000 was like 1 trillion a year. Now it's 7 trillion. They'll just keep spending more money. It doesn't matter. The healthcare costs in the country to fund universal healthcare, they said it's like $4.5 trillion. They only bring in 5.3 trillion. So what you think is, well, if they get the 4.5 trillion, then right, they take it from the billionaires. They have to do this every year, by the way. So the billionaires don't even have enough money for this to happen because they don't generate that much income each year to be able to pay that. So they're going to have to start coming after the 100 millionaires. Oh no, I feel so bad for the 100 millionaires. No one cares about them. I get it. But the point is that they will always keep using these taxes to go lower and lower and lower until everybody pays them. That's how the income tax worked. The first one was only on like the top 2% richest people in the country. Now it's everybody. If you make over $14,000, you pay income tax. $14,000 isn't shit. You can't afford your life on that. They start taxing you immediately after you make that much. So my point here is, what is the solution then? In my opinion, the solution is for the government to reduce taxes. I would like them to eliminate income tax, and then we have taxes on spending, not taxes on creating value and money working. But either way, I want the people, okay? The people are right when they say they're underpaid. They don't make enough at this, this profession, this profession. It's not every single profession. There's plenty of professions that are, paid at a fair rate. But the people that are at the bottom, they are getting screwed over. How do we, create a system that they will get paid enough? The only way is by you taking personal responsibility, you and me and everybody else. For me particularly, okay, I didn't graduate high school. I got a GED. I started my own business. I didn't want to work for other people. I don't want to make a low wage. I want to make a lot of money. Just recently, I've been doing this business for 12 years, and I just finally recently started making a decent salary. Just finally after 12 years. Okay. But it is putting me in a position where I could be making a lot of money very soon. I think that the workers that are doing menial jobs, they do need to be able to, make enough money to support a family and have good food and everything like that. But we need to demand it from the employers, not try to get the government to have more power. Giving the government power over companies to raise the minimum wage, to take more taxes if somebody is successful, and then they claim they will give it to the poor people. So how does that increase their wage? How does that increase the amount of money someone's going to get if you take the money from the billionaires and give it to the government? It's not going to. That doesn't increase anybody's wage. It just takes money from somebody who has money and then gives it to the government, who also has tons of money, and they can actually print as much of it as they want. So how does the worker get more money? Minimum wage laws. People believe that will help. I think that overall it's a negative, but sure, go for it. I don't think it's the biggest problem either if minimum wage gets raised. Maybe it'll work. I don't believe so, but keep trying it. I think that it'll just be that anyone who makes above minimum wage, now they'll look at minimum wage and they'll compare. I used to make 50% more than minimum wage. How come I don't make 50% more than minimum wage now? And then Now the employer has to pay them that much more money, and then they pay the minimum wage person that much more money, and then they raise their prices. Everybody raises their prices, and no one makes any more money because now the money is worth less than it was before. So they make the same amount of money. What needs to happen is a shift in how people value the employees on a large scale. In my industry, in window cleaning, our customers only value us to a certain rate. They think, this is a window cleaner, I'm willing to pay this amount. Even if that person is ultra wealthy, it doesn't matter if they're middle class, upper class, ultra wealthy, they have an idea of how much you are worth. What needs to happen is the people who have money need to realize the worth of all these people, and it's not even just the worth. These people need to be able to take care of themselves. Otherwise, they won't be able to work for you. So it's a difficult process, but it is individual workers that have to just value themselves higher. That's the only way. People keep saying, oh, the billionaires, they are exploiting all of the workers. They can't exploit the workers if the workers won't work for them. And people can say, but people have to take care of themselves. I get it, but if you're willing to accept lower than how much you can take care of yourself, how are you taking care of yourself anyway? You're not. Now you're going and asking the government to supplement your income. How do you get out of that situation? The only way that you can actually get out of that situation individually, not as a society, is by getting some form of education, starting your own business, proving your value to an employer, and now becoming, a manager or a regional manager or whatever advancement opportunities there are if you're starting at a low wage. That's only an individual solution. That doesn't solve the overall problem. Giving all the money to the government to give you welfare doesn't solve the problem either, because now you're still begging the government. So your employer's getting a great deal on you. Like people point out at Walmart, many of the Walmart employees are subsidized by the government. How is taking money from the people who own Walmart going to get the Walmart employees more money? It's not going to. Walmart doesn't work like that. When they have less money, they don't give raises. So I'm not saying Walmart should just have more money, but taking all the money from these companies isn't going to get more people higher wages. It's just going to give the government more money, and then they'll hold that over everybody else's head, and you'll have to go into these departments and talk to these people, or now have video calls with them or whatever, and prove that you're too poor to take care of yourself, and hope that they approve your Medicaid, Medicare, welfare benefits, food stamps, whatever it is. I don't want people to be on food stamps. I don't want people to be on welfare. Is there disabled people that need government support? Of course there is. But that's a small percentage of people. Most of the people who are on welfare, they do work part-time jobs or even full-time jobs that just don't pay enough. I want the jobs to just pay enough. That's really the only option that I see getting us out of this situation. What people are pushing for is more government power, more government spending, and it's just going to lead to the same issues and a higher deficit. And then with the higher deficit, we're going to pay more interest. What I'm looking at right here is 20% of the revenue goes directly to paying interest. $1 trillion, okay? $2,852 per person. That just pays interest. It literally doesn't do anything for anybody. Well, it does for the investors in America, the people who run the Federal Reserve Bank, the people in China, and the Japanese government who own part of our debt. So I just wanted to go through this, and I know that this is a long-winded description of how the government functions and how they spend, and the billionaires having all this wealth and trying to transfer the wealth from the billionaires to the government. I just want the people to have their own money. It's not that complicated. The only thing that it takes is you and me and your family and your friends and your coworkers demanding that you get a living wage. It's not tell the government to tell the companies to pay us, tell them. That just gives up your power. It gives the power back to the government. The government doesn't care about you. The billionaires don't care about you. They give the power back and forth, and they argue in front of you to make it look like they're not working together when they are. The billionaires, everybody knows the billionaires bought the government. So if you know that, why would you want the billionaires to give them money when they're already giving the billionaires money? Let's take the money out of the government, back into the hands of the people, and demand from these ultra wealthy companies. If Jeff Bezos is just making so much money at his companies, then if you're an Amazon worker, you need to demand that. It's the only way, whether it's through a union or not. I'm not the biggest fan of unions, but some unions definitely work out for the people who work in them. But it doesn't matter if you're in a union or not. If people don't accept these wages, it just becomes known that this is how much you have to pay. After COVID, this happened because people were getting paychecks for not working that were more than their paycheck for working. After they raised the unemployment bonuses, it raised wages immediately. I had to start paying way more for my employees right after that, just because no one understood how they could have got paid to do nothing that much more than they were getting paid to actually work 40 hours a week. Immediately raised how much employers paid. That will happen very quickly if people stop accepting these jobs, or they start their own businesses and try to compete, do different things like that. But that's not really what this episode's about, is how to improve individually. It's an overall, system-wide attitude that people need to have. They have to be able to take that responsibility for themselves. It's the only thing that is going to solve it. Even in an entirely communist-controlled, planned economy, you will not have the individual power to change the system, to decide your own life. There's always going to be people holding power, no matter what. That's why my main goal of this podcast is for freedom. That's my main ideology. The ideology is a sovereign individual that gets to determine what happens in their life to a major extent, okay, based on their own decisions and actions to try to better their own lives. So for the people who think, well, how are you going to fund the government if we get rid of the taxes and we take away the money from the federal government? Well, I do discuss that in some of the other episodes, but I definitely don't think the federal government owning AI companies or just implementing a 5% wealth tax for billionaires is going to solve our problems, because they're still going to be in control of that money at the end of the day. It's not going to go to the poor people that need it. So this is just something that we're going to have to take into our own hands. You can't trust the government to take care of you, and you can't trust the billionaires to just have a change of heart and start paying people better. It's not going to happen. So you got to take this responsibility, of your own life and for your neighbors in your community. Go volunteer sometimes, donate to a charity if you have the means. We need to be working together. We have to talk to the wealthy people in our areas to tell them what we think about how we can, better all of our lives, because there's plenty of wealthy people that are horrible, insane assholes. And there's plenty of wealthy people that are just like you, a very nice and generous person who wants to help, but maybe they don't know how. And just because they're wealthy doesn't mean that they don't have their own stresses and struggles in their life and they can only think about helping the community. So I'll end the same way as I always do, with a message of unity, that it's not me or a Republican or a Democrat or a Green Party person or a Libertarian that are fighting against each other, okay? We have our own ideas about how we can make our community a better place, but most people, almost everybody, has the same interests in mind, and that is to create a better life for themselves, their friends, their family, and the overall community even that they live in. And we have to be able to understand that before we even have the more philosophical, or political conversations about how to actually solve these problems. You have to understand that it's coming from a place of wanting improvement. If you think that the other party is nefarious, we can't even start with the conversation that's going to make sense, because no one will believe the other one that they're even sincere about what they want. So when you're having these conversations, try to have some compassion and try to understand the other person and what their actual intent is, not just the content if you disagree with their political opinion. So I'll leave you with that. And as always, remember to vote your conscience with your dollars, your own decisions, and at the polls. Thank you for listening to Vote Your Conscience with Kevin Stolla.